Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of August 2019. I am filming this video the morning of the day that I am flying to England for my study abroad, so I'm sorry that the lighting in this video is not great. I am not bringing my light with me to England because it just takes up way too much room, and my suitcase probably already weighs 50 pounds as it is. It is so heavy. Also, I pre-filmed several videos before I left Florida, so in my future videos when I'm in Florida and my hair looks longer, that's because I pre-filmed them, so that's why there's going to be that disparity. So now that we cleared that up, this month I read 4 books for a total of 1,326 pages and an average star rating of 3.125. I have to be honest, there were some books this month that I found disappointing, and I'm gonna have a really controversial opinion in this video, but let's just get right into it. I'm trying to sit up straighter because I feel like the way that I'm sitting on this bed, I'm kind of hunched over and like my stomach doesn't look great, but you know, hey ladies, it's normal. We all have rolls when we're sitting down. It's totally fine. So the first book that I read this month, it feels like I read it so long ago because I read it at the very beginning of August, was The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, and I gave this book 3 stars. This book follows Lo, and Lo is a travel writer who ends up going on this cruise because her boss is on maternity leave, and she ends up going on this trip to review this new cruise vessel. Now, while she's on the ship, there is a woman in the cabin next to hers, cabin 10, who she borrows some mascara from, and then later Lo hears a commotion and thinks that a body from cabin 10 was tossed into the ocean, and after this she can find no trace of the woman in cabin 10 everywhere. With nobody believing what she saw, she is determined that she is going to solve this murder and find out what happened to the woman in cabin 10. So my mom checked this book out from the library, and after she finished it, I actually took the book to read because I know a lot of people on BookTube love Ruth Ware's mysteries, and I had never read one of her books before. I know this is not a lot of people's favorite Ruth Ware, and I agree. My mom was very blown away by the reveal in this book. However, I have to admit, I actually theorized it before it happened. I did see who it was, however I didn't get the motive correct, and I think there was a lot of foreshadowing for this, which I actually think was really clever foreshadowing. However, I picked up on it, and that's how I was able to correctly predict the first twist in this book. I wouldn't say that I got everything right because, like I said, I didn't know the motive exactly, and there were some parts of the twist that I didn't predict. However, I did get a lot of it right, but I wasn't really that mad about it. I did think it was a really interesting twist, and I also really liked the ending of this book. One of the things that I didn't like about The Woman in Cabin 10 is that I found the main character, Lo, very, very annoying. I did not think she was the most intelligent main character, and some of her thought processes just didn't make any sense to me. I said earlier that I really like the end of the book, and I'm gonna phrase this without spoiling anything, so hopefully you guys, if you haven't read the book, still understand what I'm trying to say. There is this thing that happens at the end that I really liked. However, Lo's deduction, she comes to some conclusion, which I feel like if you look at the facts presented, you would realize that this conclusion that she makes absolutely no sense, and I just don't know why this is what she was thinking, because it just doesn't make any sense when you look at all the evidence she has, why she made this determination. I just thought she was a really dumb main character at points. I also felt like Lo's relationship with her boyfriend, whose name I have already forgotten, just was not very memorable. At the beginning of the book, we see that Lo has some commitment issues, and I thought we were going to get to the root of why she feels that way, and it really wasn't addressed that much. I felt like it wasn't really necessary. And also there is this former coworker that Lo meets on this cruise vessel, whose name I've also forgotten, and I just hated him so much. He keeps hitting on her and making unwanted advances, and I thought he was just absolutely awful, and I don't think I was supposed to like him, but I also was just very annoyed by his presence, and I don't feel like he had to be there at all. There's also this one moment between him and Lo, which goes back to my complaints about Lo as a character, and her actions in that moment were just dumb. I just didn't like them. So I thought there were some really interesting things about this book. However, I didn't really like any of the characters, and some of the decisions in this book were just really stupid. Okay, next, I listened to the audiobook of Sadie by Courtney Summers. This was my first ever audiobook, and this was a book that I was really excited to read. I think it was one of the books so far this year that I've been the most excited about, and I was expecting for this to be mind-blowingly amazing, one of my new favorites, and this is where the controversial opinion comes in. Hot take, I thought this book was really disappointing, and in the end, I went back and forth on my rating, but I finally decided to give it 2.5 stars. Don't hate me. So Sadie follows our title character after the murder of her younger sister Maddie, and Sadie wants to find the person who killed her sister and bring him to justice. Meanwhile, there is also a radio host who is hosting a podcast talking about Sadie and Maddie. So we alternate between Sadie's point of view and also this host trying to figure out where it is that Sadie went. And I think the reason why I was unsure whether I wanted to give this book 2 stars or 3 is because I didn't think it was a bad book by any means. There were parts that I really liked about it, and I thought it was well written. I would definitely read more books by Courtney Summers as she comes out with more young adult thrillers in the future. However, I was very disappointed by this book because I thought I was going to love it, and I kept waiting for something. I felt a lot of anticipation, thinking that soon something really exciting was going to happen. There was going to be a plot twist, that there was finally going to be a big moment between Sadie and her sister's killer. However, I felt like nothing very surprising happened in this book, and it sort of felt like lots and lots of build-up for something that I thought was coming, and then there was no satisfying climax. I also didn't like the ending of this book, and I know that a lot of people didn't like it, and there were some people who did. It had a very mixed reception, though I know I'm definitely not the only one who wasn't satisfied with the ending. I just felt like it didn't work for this book at all. My feelings about Sadie were very similar to my feelings about The Female of the Species, another book that's really popular on BookTube. By the way, I would definitely give Sadie a trigger warning for sexual abuse because that's something that's dealt with in this book, and it's not very graphic, but it's very clear that sexual abuse happened to some of the main characters in the past. With The Female of the Species, I picked it up thinking that it was going to be a young adult mystery thriller, not really a mystery, but a thriller, a revenge story. And I felt the same way about Sadie. However, I felt like it was really a contemporary talking about hard-hitting issues with sexism and rape and abuse, but the plot itself just wasn't what I was looking for. I felt like both of them just lacked that really wow moment that I was looking for, and I felt like the revenge thing wasn't as much of a plot of either of these books as I hoped it would be, because I love revenge stories. I love that sort of that gray morality and a character who has gone through something really terrible and they just feel this need for revenge and what's too much, you know, but I didn't get that from either of these books, and I think that was very disappointing to me. I thought they were well done, and they talked about these issues very well. However, they weren't very thrilling. I thought that Sadie was going to be about Sadie's wanting to get revenge for her sister, and the revenge aspect was sorely lacking. The final confrontation between Sadie and her sister's killer was very anticlimactic in my opinion, and I was very disappointed by it. I felt like the entire book I was waiting for this moment, and when it finally came, it was just not at all what I was expecting or what I was hoping it would be. Also, I'm a little confused about this certain part of the plot, so I'm just going to hold my hand up while I'm talking about spoilers, and then when I put it down, then I'm done. So if you haven't read this book and you want to and you don't want to be spoiled, just mute it while my hand is up, starting now. So we find out that Keith, Sadie and Maddie's mom's ex-boyfriend, sexually abused them both as children, and he killed Maddie. But I don't really understand why he did this, because we find out that Keith, which isn't his real name, but I'm going to call him Keith because he goes by a lot of different names, is now living in a different city hours away, dating another woman and sexually abusing her daughter. So I don't really understand what he was doing back in Cold Creek that night and what his motivation was for killing Maddie. He's a pedophile, he's moved on, he has another victim. And so I don't really understand what the big deal about Maddie was. Why was he back in Cold Creek that night, and what did he kill Maddie for? I just don't really understand why Maddie herself was such a big deal. I just don't understand what his motive was, why he was even there in the first place. Maybe this was explained and I just missed it. If it was, please let me know, because I was genuinely confused by this and I didn't think it made much sense. So overall, while Sadie did have some things going for it, the plot just wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be, and I felt like there was a lot of build-up, not a lot of payoff, which is why I didn't like this book, and I was very disappointed by it. However, I think Courtney Summers has a good writing style. I would read more books from her if she comes out with more in the future. And I also think that the audiobook is a good way to go for this because of the element of the podcast. And I think it's really cool to listen to it like it's an actual podcast and have that experience. So next up, I read a nonfiction. It was a biography, which I usually don't read a lot of, but I wanted to read this in preparation for my trip to Bath, and that was Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. I got this from my library, so it has to go back, and I gave this book 4 stars. My bookmark is still here, sorry, it's moving around. I don't really know what to say about it, though, because I don't really know how do you review nonfiction? Like, I don't know. So this is a biography of Jane Austen talking about her life through the lenses of the different homes that she lived in. And I thought there were a lot of things about this biography that were really interesting. It was interesting to learn about Jane Austen's home life and her family, who I didn't know a lot about. It was interesting to see her parents and her relationship with her sister Cassandra, and how the different places that she lived and the experiences in her family influenced her writing. So I thought that was all very interesting. I have read 2 Jane Austen books, and I really like Jane Austen. I'm taking a whole class on her in Bath this semester. However, I don't know a lot about her life, so I can't say whether or not everything in this book was accurate or not. I am definitely not a Jane Austen expert, and I really read this book as an introduction to her life so that I would know a little bit more about her before I take this class, so that maybe it would give me a new perspective on her works. I definitely thought there were a lot of interesting things going on here. I don't really know how to review this. I don't know how to review a biography. I thought it was good. I gave it 4 stars because I wasn't blown away by it. I cannot attest to its accuracy, but I thought it was well written. And I thought for a nonfiction work, it was pretty interesting. So I feel like I just tried to say work and then I changed it to book. So it came out sounding weird. But I don't know. I just need to stop talking about this because I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm doing. So the final book I read in August is another book that is really popular on BookTube. It is the first in a series, and that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco, which I gave 3 stars. So this book takes place in Victorian England, where the serial killer Jack the Ripper begins terrorizing the city of London. Now, our main character is a teenage girl named Audrey Rose who is really interested in forensics and wants to study under her uncle. However, in the Victorian era, that is not considered an appropriate profession for a lady, and her father would much rather she be a proper lady and get married. However, when Jack the Ripper begins murdering prostitutes in London, Audrey Rose wants to find out his true identity, and she decides she's going to solve the mystery with the help of Thomas, who is another protege of her uncle. I thought Audrey Rose was actually a very interesting main character. I like that even though she is interested in forensics and she is very tough, she also likes stereotypically feminine things, like she's interested in fashion. And I really liked that because I have a problem where male writers always seem to write strong female characters as being very androgynous, and they think that in order to be strong, you need to strip a female character of her stereotypically feminine qualities, and that really bugs me. So I liked that Audrey Rose was a strong, independent-minded female character who was also interested in some girly things. I really liked that. I have to say her romance with Thomas, well, I didn't hate it. I did think it was a little insta-lovey. Though they initially don't like each other when they meet, we do see Audrey Rose thinking about how handsome he is and trying to fight those feelings for him. So I thought it was a pretty typical young adult romance, and I would have liked it if maybe they hadn't had her think about how handsome he was from the beginning. If they had taken that away and just had it be a enemies to friends to lovers romance, I would have really liked that, because I think enemies to friends to lovers is one of my favorite romance tropes. I mean, it combines the best parts of enemies to lovers and friends to lovers into one. How can you not love that? I don't think saying that the two of them are in a romantic relationship is a spoiler, because I knew that going in. I feel like people on BookTube talk about that ship pretty openly, so I feel like it's not a spoiler for me to say that. A problem that I have with this book is that I feel like there aren't that many main male characters that you can suspect of being Jack the Ripper. So while my initial guess about who I thought Jack the Ripper was incorrect, after that I thought it was pretty easy to figure out by process of elimination. So I don't think the ending is going to be the most shocking by any means. However, I did think there was some good foreshadowing that I did not pick up on, that I only realized when I got to the end how important that was, and I did like that. I really like it when authors do very subtle foreshadowing details that at first you're not going to think are important, and then when you look back you realize how all of these added up to the eventual solution. And I also think that Jack the Ripper's motive for being Jack the Ripper was really interesting, and I never would have thought of that. Now, I don't watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but for some reason now I'm thinking about that gif of Andy Samberg being like, cool motive, still murder. That's what I'm thinking of right now. I don't know. So I did think the reveal of Jack the Ripper's true identity was executed very well. Even though I did see certain aspects of it coming, there were also things that were surprising and pieces that I did not pull together until that moment. However, I definitely think that the ending could have dealt more with the fallout of the Ripper's identity, and without spoiling anything, there is a character who just completely changes their entire tune in about 5 pages, and that just made me roll my eyes a little bit, because it felt like everything was being tied up in a really neat little bow that was just not realistic, and I didn't like that. I might read more books in this series, because I did think this was very enjoyable. There were things I didn't like about it. However, I think as far as young adult books go, it was pretty entertaining, so I might read the next book in the series, but I also might not. I'm not really sure. I also have heard people say the books get worse as you go on, that people who really like the series find some of the later books very unsatisfying. I think I've heard people say that, so while I might continue on with the series, I also don't feel any burning need to continue on. I'm just really not sure at this point. So guys, that about covers it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of August 2019. What was your favorite book that you read in August? What was your least favorite? Did you read any of the books that I read this month? If you did, let me know what were your thoughts about them. Do you agree, disagree? Do you hate me now because I gave Sadie 2.5 stars? I am really sorry. Just my opinion. It is nothing personal against you if you love that book. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, even with my controversial opinion. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. My social media links are down below if you want to follow my Bookstagram, follow me on Tumblr, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.